What's up, Reconcile fam? If you guys are journeying with us, we're in this series called Jesus Changed Me. And last week, we looked at the story of Nicodemus, and we saw his encounter with Jesus and how that changed him. And we're going to focus on one of the main things that was holding Nicodemus back in his life and in specifically his relationship with God. But it's the same thing that plagues all of us and that really holds all of us back in our life. And what it means to be human means to struggle with this thing. And this thing can be one of the most destructive forces in our lives, and we're all susceptible to it. It's subtle, and it starts small, and most of the time it goes uneasily detected by us ourselves. But others can see it really easily, and we can see it in others. It's obvious when we see it in others, but it's so hard for us to see it in ourselves. And this one thing can erode a life. It's the thing that's really started probably every single war that we've ever had. And what this thing is it's pride. Pride. Pride is that thing that can keep us isolated and disconnected in our life. Pride is that thing that keeps us from admitting our faults or our wrongs. It's pride. And we see that Nicodemus, he struggled with pride because he relied on his own strength and his own knowledge and his own intellect. But we see that his guard started to come down when he encountered Jesus. In pride, this is what pride does to us. It connects every single experience that we have or anything that's said around us. We connect it with ourself. That's what pride does. It makes us connect every single experience or story or anything that anybody says with ourselves. Pride gets our focus on ourselves, and we become obsessed with ourselves. How are people viewing us? How are we viewing ourselves? And that's what pride does. Pride is, honestly, it's like a disease. Tim Keller says that pride is the sin that is underneath every other sin. So really, if you want to get to the root at what sin is, it's pride. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9, the wisdom literature states, better to be lowly of spirit with the humble than to divide the plunder with the proud. Why? Proverbs chapter 29, verse 23 states, a person's pride will eventually humble them. It'll lead to their downfall, but humility will always lead to honor. Always. Pride is not thinking more of ourselves. It's not thinking less of ourselves. It's thinking of ourselves less. And this is what I mean by that statement. Pride, this is what pride will do to you in your life. It'll give you an inflated view of yourself. You'll think way more highly of yourself than you should. But also pride can do the exact opposite. And most of the time, we don't recognize it. But pride could have us thinking too lowly of ourselves as well, to the point where we become a victim and we're crippled by our circumstances. And we have a woe is me mentality. That's what pride can do. And Tim Keller, he says that pride, you know that a person is humble when they just think of themselves less. And how do we fight against pride? How did Nicodemus do it? How does this happen? And we see that we need to become infatuated, enamored. We need to fall in love with something that's bigger than ourselves. Because what pride is it's self-worship. That's what it is. We're in love with ourselves. It's so vain. That's what pride is. And so in order to fight against pride, we have to fall in love with something that is bigger than ourselves. And we see that's exactly what happened in Nicodemus's life. He encountered Jesus. His walls started to come down. He started to rely on his intellect a little bit less. He started to kill his ego, is what I like to say. Because remember, your ego is not your amigo. And we see that the walls of pride started to come down, but this is what happened. Nicodemus started to take his focus off of himself, and he started to focus it on something else, something that was a lot bigger than himself. And then at the end of the journey, his focus was on the cross, and it was on Jesus crucified. And we see that's when Nicodemus's life changed forever. He was willing to risk it all because his focus was now on the cross. His focus was completely on Jesus. And humility will always lead us to Jesus every single time. And so as we're having this conversation and we're looking at how Jesus changed Nicodemus's life, I want us to be thinking, how has Jesus changed your life? And I'm inviting all of you guys. We're going to have a Zoom call next Thursday, and we'll make sure that we push the date out for everybody, but we're going to have a conversation that's focused on this topic. Because if pride is the sin that is beneath every sin, I think it's important enough for us to talk about and have a conversation about. So journey with us. Make sure that you are following along with our teachings, and be on the lookout for our next Zoom call. We're going to get together and we're going to have a conversation on pride. So thank you guys for being here today. Hope you guys have a blessed day. Thanks for joining us.